In this video, we're going to be putting every ride at Islands of Adventure on a tier list, from S as the best to F as the worst. Starting off in Seuss Landing, let's talk about a handful of rides that rank a bit low on this list. First off, while the Carousel has some charming theming, in the end, it's a pretty standard flat ride. Same goes for One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish, although that has the added perk of some extra interactivity. In the end though, I think I'll place both of these in the D tier. They're not bad rides by any means. There's just a whole lot better yet to come on this list. Speaking of rides that are better, let's head on up to the High in the Sky Seuss Trolley Train ride. I'm a sucker for rides that take you behind the scenes of places you normally wouldn't go. The People Mover at Walt Disney World is a great example of this, taking you inside several shops and rides, including Space Mountain. The Seuss Trolley Train ride isn't quite as good in that regard, but I still feel that it has plenty of redeeming factors. The interactivity with guest areas, the nicely themed indoor sections, and even the two tracks which take you two different directions. It's a very charming ride, and certainly the best on offer in Seuss Landing. Still, it is a fairly slow-moving kids ride, and I'll admit that I usually skip it whenever I'm visiting Islands of Adventure. Despite its perks, I don't think I can put it any higher than the C tier. Before we leave this land, however, we have one last ride that we have yet to discuss. While the Cat in the Hat started out as a pretty decent dark ride for kids, its currently deteriorating state makes it one of the worst in the entire resort. As time goes on, the ride vehicles move around less and less, the animatronics get more and more janky, and the charming theme this ride used to have continues to grow more and more creepy. If Universal took the time to really renovate this ride, it could have a lot more potential, but in its current state, this will have to be the one and only F tier on this list. On that sour note, let's move out of Seuss Landing and into one of the more forgotten lands at the park. Despite its incredible theming, the Lost Continent doesn't really have much for guests to do. The one attraction it does have, and the one we'll be discussing now, is the fantastic yet awful Poseidon's Fury. Let me explain what I mean. This show has some truly incredible theming and effects, such as the amazing water tunnel and the wild room transformation at the end. It's also very unique in its execution, with it partially being a walkthrough, yet partially a show as well. Unfortunately, the show itself is pretty lame. It's incredibly short, only taking up 3 rooms or so, and the big finale is just 2 guys in cheap costumes swinging around some swords. If the finale matched the promise of the immaculate theming seen beforehand, this could have been elevated beyond mediocrity. In the end though, I have to place this ride in the C tier. There's a lot to like here, but plenty to dislike as well. Now, let's move on to the most popular land of the park by far. Hogsmeade is one of the best themed lands in the world, which is further elevated by some of the world's best rides. The first of those rides is the world-class Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. With a unique Kuka arm ride system and unusual mix of practical set pieces and screens, Forbidden Journey stands out as one of the most innovative dark rides ever made. I love the encounters you have with the soul-sucking Death Eaters, and the moment where you nearly crash headfirst into the Whomping Willow. While those moments really stand out, the simulated portions don't work quite as well for me. I understand their necessity considering the space restraints of the area, but still, I don't find those moments particularly engaging. Still, this ride is fantastic, and one of the standouts in the park, placing it nicely in the A tier of this list. However, there's one ride in this land that I believe stands above it. Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure is not only the best ride in this land, but potentially the best ride in this entire park. It's the perfect mixture between roller coaster and dark ride, with some fantastic theming, effects, and thrill. Even the pre-show is over the top, with some cool wind and water effects thrown throughout. Hagrid's is a must-ride attraction during every visit, and I couldn't think of a better ride to be this list's first S tier. There's one more roller coaster left before we leave this land, and it's one that's significantly less exciting. Flight of the Hippogriff is a perfectly decent family roller coaster, with a cool animatronic and nice forest theming. Other than that though, nothing really stands out, which is why it'll have to land in the D tier. That wraps up all the Harry Potter rides, so let's move into Jurassic Park to talk about 2 more top-class attractions. First up is a ride that I used to not get the love for. As recently as a few months ago, Jurassic Park River Adventure was my least favorite of the 3 water rides in the park. The beginning just felt so slow, and while the drop was great, it seemed as though it was too little thrill for a ride of that scale. Now though, I think I understand the appeal. The relaxing first half works perfectly to build up to where it all goes wrong. The transition from nice and relaxing to dark and dismal is incredibly well executed, and the anxiety you get going up that 85-foot hill is unmatched. As for that drop, it's easily the best I've experienced on a water ride. It feels as though you're falling forever, and the impressive T-Rex animatronic at the top truly heightens the experience. While the animatronics are in a bit of a rough state, I feel as though Jurassic Park River Adventure elevates itself above the other two water rides in the park. Overall, that'll have to land it in the A tier. A great ride that truly feels like a mirror of the films it's based on. The second great dinosaur-themed ride on this list is also the newest at the resort. Jurassic World Velocicoaster is a ride that I can't seem to talk enough about. It's not only my favorite roller coaster in the world, but one of my favorite rides in general. From the top hat to the Mosasaurus roll, the layout is filled with so many amazing moments. It's incredibly intense, yet incredibly re-rideable as well. The theming is great too, with some beautiful rock work and nice landscaping by the end. I've already sung this ride's praises plenty on this channel, so it shouldn't be a surprise that it's the second S tier on this list. Easily one of the best things Universal has ever created. Before we leave Jurassic Park, I figure I should mention Pteranodon Flyers. Since this ride can only be experienced with a small child, I have yet to go on it. Based on the outside view, this would probably go in the D tier, but for the sake of accuracy, I won't put it on the tier list. Moving on from that, let's head right into a sort of mini-land for the park. Like the Lost Continent, Skull Island is home to only one attraction. And just like Poseidon's Fury, Reign of Kong is just alright. Being a clone of the simulated portion in Hollywood's Universal Studio Tour, the core of the ride itself is okay at best. Like Fast and Furious, the big ending of this ride is being surrounded by a screen and just getting bombarded by noise. It's not particularly engaging or fun, which is a bummer considering how much this ride does right. The theming of the exterior is incredible, with a sense of scale that's unmatched for much of the park. Not to mention, there's so many animatronics throughout, from the queue to the end of the ride itself. Overall, the good and the bad of this ride put it squarely in the C tier for me. Certainly better than Fast and Furious, but nowhere near great either. Contrasting the dark and dismal Skull Island is the bright and colorful Toon Lagoon, featuring two really solid water rides I'd love to revisit. There's Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls, a classic log flume with a ton of unique elements, along with Popeye and Bluto's Bilge Rat Barges, one of the wettest raft rides in the world. These two rides place incredibly close together on this list, to the point where I don't know which one I prefer. Dudley is great for its charming sense of humor and nice cartoony theme, while Popeye specializes in getting guests soaking wet, whether they like it or not. The main downside with Dudley is the ride vehicle, which is incredibly difficult to get in and out of for guests with long legs like myself. Also, while Popeye's is really fun in the moment, I find that it's a little short and sometimes not worth walking around in wet socks for the rest of the day. That said, I'll be putting both of these rides close together in the B tier. While both are some of the best water rides out there, each have their own small issues that bring them down a little bit. Finally, let's move on to the last land in the park, Marvel Superhero Island. While this land features two of the best rides in the entire park, it also features two of the most disappointing. First of which is a fairly basic spinning flat ride that doesn't do much to impress. Stormforce Accelatron works as a way to divert guests from the other big rides, but isn't anything beyond a simple teacup clone. For that reason, I'm gonna slide it in the D tier, along with the second basic ride in this land. While Dr. Doom's Fearfall looks impressive from the outside, the ride experience itself is shockingly one note. All it does is boost you up once and then bounce you another time on your way back down. The queue is pretty cool, but that doesn't save it from joining Stormforce Accelatron in the D tier. However, we won't be ending this video on a sour note. Marvel Superhero Island is also home to one of the most intense and incredible coasters in the state of Florida. The Incredible Hulk coaster has an impeccable first half, with a unique tire-driven launch and several fantastic inversions. The second half is admittedly a little lackluster, but there's no denying how outstanding this ride is when you're on it. The theming is pretty solid as well, with an electric interior and desert-like exterior. All that adds up to a very solid A tier for Hulk, one of those rides that I always love to hop on. Now, there's only one ride left to finish off this list, and it's one that I think may just be the best dark ride in the entire world. The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man is packed to the brim with non-stop action, featuring several encounters with the hero's most iconic villains. While the ride does feature plenty of screens, it feels perfectly balanced when considering all the physical set pieces and advanced effects throughout. Even the movement of the vehicle itself seems perfectly synced to the action on display, which makes it not only fun, but thrilling as well. Honestly, I could go on and on about this ride for days, but for the sake of this video, let's just put Spider-Man in the S tier and move on with our lives. That said, here's the final tier list. Be sure to check out my tier list of the other Universal parks, and if you'd like to make your own, check out the link in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.